widely traveled journalist from Al Jazeera could not help but deliver a sharp and crisp piece to camera to highlight the significance of where he found himself.
This narrow strip of water in Istanbul is all that separates Asia from Europe. On that side of the shore is Europe, and on this shore is Asia. That's the reason that Turkey has always been described by the outside world as a bridge between continents, cultures and religions. But there's a new drive under the Turkish foreign minister that wants to see Turkey and reveal Turkey not as a crossroads, but as a center in itself, a center of power, a center of influence.
I had my own take. In fact, I tried to reach as far as the Asian side of Istanbul. It was a beautiful place.
Istanbul has given us the unique opportunity to learn about the first-hand history of this cosmopolitan settlement. It has also, if anything, given us the unique opportunity to meet the people who matter most.
Throughout the year, and after that, nothing significant happened at this square. However, few weeks back, things started to change when authorities at Ankara decided to erect some structures at Taksim Square. The reaction from the ordinary people was spectacular. From a quiet yet lively place, the square was now like a war zone. Day in, day out, people started to storm the place, demanding Ankara back down its plans to restructure Taksim Square. Then the breakthrough, after sustained efforts by so-called environmental activists who met Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Now many are asking questions like whether Taksim Square will ever be the same again. Ibrahim Balde, Weekend Spectrum.
Mandela's given name, Lorisasa, means tidying up branches of a tree, but at school he was given the name of another famous leader. Henceforth, he was known to the world as Nelson Mandela. As the son of a chief, Nelson Mandela had access to the best education available to South Africa at the time. Studying at Fort-Hare University, where he became involved in students' protests, his refusal to accept injustice and fairness, Nelson Lorisasa Mandela began his life herding sheep and cattle in the holy hills of South Africa's Eastern Cape. In his autobiography, part of which was written secretly while he was in prison, Nelson Lorisasa Mandela began his life herding sheep and cattle in the holy hills of South Africa's Eastern Cape. In his autobiography, part of which was written secretly while he was in prison, Mandela wrote to the world as Nelson Mandela. As the son of a chief, Nelson Mandela had access to best of education available to South Africa at the time. Studying at Fort-Hare University, where he became involved in student protest, his refusal to accept injustice and fairness and inequality would last a lifetime. South Africa, 1941. In his early 20s, Nelson Mandela first moved to Johannesburg, where he encountered racial discrimination that would later be entrenched in law by the apartheid government. Working in the mines and later as a clerk in an oil field, Mandela pursued his law studies and joined the African National Congress, the oldest black political organization in South Africa. In 1948, the nationalist government was voted into power by white electorate in South Africa, and the battle lines were keenly drawn. In 1955, the ANC and other organizations called upon people of all races to gather in Cape Town to approve the Freedom Charter, a blueprint for a free, democratic, multiracial South Africa in which all races would be treated equally. Nelson Mandela, one of the chief organizers of the gathering, was banned by the government from attending and was forced to watch proceedings from the sidelines. In 1956, the organizers of the Freedom Charter and other leaders in the Congress movement were charged with high treason. The trial was specifically designed to occupy the opposition and keep them out of politics. It dragged on for 4.5 years. And it would be another 40 years before the Freedom Charter finally bore fruit. South Africa, 1960, Sharpeville. A black township in an industrial area south of Johannesburg, a peaceful crowd gathered to protest against the past laws and were shot at by police. 69 people died. The national government imposed martial law, all opposition was banned and thousands were jailed. When it became clear all means of peaceful negotiations have been exhausted, Mandela went underground to lead the armed struggle. Key government installations were targeted for sabotage. Mandela became known as the Black Pimpernel. In 1962, Mandela was captured, charged with leaving the country illegally, and sentenced to imprisonment for 5 years. Shortly after his ANC comrades were captured with evidence which incriminated Mandela, he returned to a court for the Rivonia trial where he and others faced a possible death penalty. When Nelson Mandela and several of his colleagues were sentenced to life imprisonment in 1964, the political convicts were sent to Robben Island Prison, the Brick Island Prison of Western Cape. Nelson Mandela was 45 years old when he became prisoner number 4666 of 1964. He would be in his early 70s before he would again be a free man. Forced to perform laborious jobs at the lime quarry, the prisoners refused to be broken. Far from being diminished, Mandela's moral leadership continued to grow while he was in prison. His young wife, Winnie, continued to be an inspiration to the struggle. Amanda Away too, power to the people, but the struggle against apartheid would continue for another quarter century. While Nelson Mandela and his co-accused served life sentences in Robben Island, other leaders of all races and spheres campaigned for change. Many faced imprisonment or exile, and around the world, ordinary people showed their horror, appetite, and support for the struggle. But in 1976, Soweto school children marched in protest and townships around the country erupted in violence. It was the beginning of the end for apartheid, but the struggle dragged on for more than a decade. The African nationalist government clung to power. In the late 1980s, amid a tide of world's pressure, the South African government was forced to accept the inevitable and began dismantling apartheid. In 1990, at the age of 71, Nelson Mandela was released unconditionally. After leading negotiations for a new South Africa, Nelson Mandela cast his vote in the first free, fair and democratic elections and became the country's first black president. For the duration